What practices are necessary for a church community to participate in? And so these show up here in Acts 2:42 through 47 as well. I'm going to give you kind of a truncated portion of it. It says, they devoted themselves to the fellowship. Now all the believers were together and held all things in common. They sold their possessions and property and distributed the proceeds to all as anyone had need. They ate their food with joyful and sincere hearts. All right, so these are just the parts of this passage that have to do with the practices of the church. And so what does it mean to be devoted to the fellowship is really the question that sets this up. And that's the first sentence there. They devoted themselves to the fellowship. Well, the first answer given in Acts 2 is that they had common property. They had common property. They shared food and resources. Now, we don't, outside of this first church in Jerusalem, we don't see this exact practice taking place. Okay? This isn't a call to full-on communal living where you write over the deed to your house and your car and everything else, and you start depositing your paycheck into the church's bank account, and everybody is taken care of that way. Sort of like a commune living or something like that. It's not what's really being that's what was taking place here, but that's not really what's being taught. What we do see happening in every single church in the ancient world, as an expression of the apostles' teaching, is that they take care of the needs of its members. That in every way, they take care of the needs of the members. And so if you're a member of Palmdale Church, we haven't had to do it lately, or haven't been asked to do it lately at the very least, but you've probably been asked at some point to take care of a need of another member. That when problems arise, we go to our members and we say, hey, we've got a need that we've got to meet in so-and-so's life, in so-and-so's family, or whatever it is. And we ask you to participate in that, to be a part of meeting that need. So it's not really full-on communal living, but it is having an understanding that as a part of this community, that we're going to be that devoted to each other. That we're going to be that devoted to each other, so that when there's an issue of food or other resources, that we come together to meet that need. Again, we know actually from Acts 4 that even within the Jerusalem community, this wasn't compulsory even here. And so I want you to think of it that way, because if it's compulsory, then it's almost like you're buying into the community, right? Like you're like, well, fine, if I want to be saved and I want to be a part of the church, then I guess I have to do this, and it becomes a begrudging thing if it's compulsory. What I want you to realize is that within the church, we're actually given the joy of living like Christ himself lived and giving up our lives for the benefit of others when we're a part of a church community and we're called upon to meet people's needs, that's actually becomes a joy to us to do that. And so it's kind of an important note here that even in that church, it wasn't compulsory. Look at 1 Thessalonians 5:14 and Galatians 6:2. In Thessalonians, it says, we exhort you, brothers and sisters, warn those who are idle, comfort the discouraged, help the weak, be patient with everyone. And then in Galatians 6:2, it says, carry one another's burdens. In this way, you will fulfill the law of Christ. There's a warning in here not to be an idle person who takes advantage. Whenever we talk about meeting needs in the church, that's the question that comes up. What about the person who's going to take advantage of that, right? What about the person who's going to go, well, the church will take care of me, so I'm not going to go get that job, or something like that. Somebody who decides, well, I can't have the job I want, so I'm just not going to work, but then I can't make ends meet, so I'll just ask the church. If you think that doesn't happen, get more involved in leadership, and you'll find out that does actually happen. Hasn't happened in our church in a long time that somebody's asked for something like that. Somebody's been in that situation, but it's certainly happened, and it happens in every church. And you ask Talina, who answers our voicemails. She gets calls all the time from people looking for a handout from the church, because they know that the church exists to help people, right? That's part of what it is. But I think the factor that's missed when you look from the outside in is that long before we're called to help people outside, we have to have the type of community with each other where we're loving each other internally, where we're developing this kind of community internally. And we have to have that first before the world then sees that and desires it. Then when they come to the church for help, they come to the church to become a part of the community of Christ, to believe what we believe, and then out of practice to practice what we practice. So if somebody's idle, somebody's lazy, something like that, that becomes a problem. And so Paul would have us to not, he says, look, comfort them if they're discouraged. Help them if they're weak. Be patient with them. But don't let somebody just remain idle. Don't let somebody be lazy and just kind of take advantage of the church. So that's sort of answering that question. And there's a love that isn't purely pragmatic. It says we will care for each other's needs, but we also want to strengthen each other as we do that. That we don't want to leave people sort of in their idleness or in their laziness. We want to encourage them out of that. And so it's neither just a heavy-handed saying, well, you haven't done your part, so you don't receive. It's not that kind of heavy-handed type of discipline, but it's also not an allowing people to just stay in the position they're in. It's an encouraging, a strengthening, a patience that builds people up as they become a part of that community.